July 26th, 1875, Calaveras County, California. John Shine. Despite his age, a youthful 27 years old, John Shine was more than experienced when it came to his profession of choice. You see, Mr. Shine was a fine example of a stagecoach driver. Having served during the Civil War, violence wasn't new to him. He was well aware of the kinds of things men were capable of. But on this warm summer's day, he would encounter a different kind of man. Guiding along a 6-horse carriage on the road between Copperopolis and Milton, a strange sight caught Mr. Shine's attention. A man emerged from behind a boulder on the side of the road and proceeded to stand in the middle, blocking the carriage's path. As Mr. Shine drew closer, he knew to expect trouble. The outlaw before him cradled a shotgun in his arms and wore a flour sack over his head with eye holes cut out. The rest of his attire was notably dapper, clad in a long linen duster and even a derby over top of his mask. Wary of the malicious-looking daylight specter, Shine came to a halt, staring down at the gunman, waiting for the crude demands of a lowlife. What he got was the most polite of requests. "Please throw down the box," the gunman asked. Shine was taken aback by this demeanor. Knowing his life wasn't worth the strongbox he was guarding, he slowly reached for it. Casually, looking over his shoulder at a nearby bush, the gunman spoke. "If he dares to shoot, give him a solid volley, boys." Shine hadn't noticed the gun barrels poking through the bushes, aimed at him and his horses. There would be no struggle. He was outnumbered. Mr. Shine threw down the box and the gunman calmly emptied its contents. With a tip of his hat, he turned and marched down the road. Shine waited until he was gone from his sight before cautiously climbing down from the carriage to reclaim the strongbox. It was here that he understood that he had been duped. There was no gang of outlaws in the bushes waiting for him to make a wrong move. Only sticks tied to branches pointed in his direction. The polite gunman in the white duster made off with a hefty $160. June 24th, 1889. Telluride, Colorado. Man came to this place for one simple reason: to take from the hills and mountains rich with potential. Deep within a greatly isolated box canyon ran silver and gold veins, untouched pristine treasure. It was only a matter of time until a mining town would be founded here in the year of 1878. 11 years later, the small, lonesome community would become famous, whether it wanted to or not. Someone was going to take from them what they had taken from the land. A crime of opportunity and sheer dumb luck was about to take place. Almost too good to be true. A group of young cattle ranchers rode into town for a simple visit to the local saloon. Not too far from this saloon was the San Miguel Valley Bank. Perhaps it was fate that guided those boys into town, but call it whatever you like, it was drawn to their attention that one of the bank tellers had headed out for the evening, leaving only one teller inside. It was an opportunity too good to pass up. The plan was made in haste, with no time to lose. 2 of them stayed outside to keep an eye out. Acting casual and calm, not even bothering to wear masks, the remainder of the party marched into the bank under the pretenses that one of them wanted to cash a check. While the teller was preoccupied, befuddled by the amount desired to be cashed, he was assaulted and the bank raided of its contents. It was that simple, as hard as it is to believe. When all was said and done, the crew made off with more than $20,000. September 10th, 1904, British Columbia, Canada. Just a few miles outside the city of Vancouver was Silverdale, a quiet and out-of-the-way neighborhood, a mission of the aptly named Mission City. Traveling east to Silverdale via the Canadian Pacific Railway's Transcontinental Express, passengers were expecting an average ride on this mild Saturday night. They received anything but. Trains of this era operated via steam-powered engines, and as such, water was necessary to build up the steam required to power them. Nearing the Mission Junction, the trains slowed down and pulled to a stop to refuel their supply of water. After a short routine stop, the Transcontinental Express resumed its journey east. Everything seemed fine until a slow, spreading commotion began to arouse. The train was being robbed. While the Transcontinental had stopped for water under the cover of night, 3 masked and armed men slipped on board. They forced the train's crew to stop only a few miles outside Silverdale and uncoupled the passenger cars from the engine itself. 'Twas not the meager sum of cash in the passengers' pockets that this crew was after, no. These men wanted what was in the safe on board. $100,000 in gold dust and bonds. After forcing the safe open and setting the crew of the Transcontinental free, the troublesome trio rode the train's engine for a few more miles before abandoning it and heading off into the cold September night with their spoils. August 21st, 1987, Lexington, South Carolina, the Citizens and Southern National Bank. $65,782. October 9th, 1987, York County, South Carolina, the Rock Hill National Bank. $94,622.54. January 22nd, 1988, Simpsonville, South Carolina, the Heritage Savings and Loan. $16,953.50. March 2nd, 1988, Charlotte, North Carolina, the First Union National Bank. $163,985. June 14th, 1988, Jacksonville, Florida, the First Federal Savings and Loan Association. $143,940. Over the course of a wild and intense 10-month period, a single man acquired an impressive $500,000 in stolen U.S. currency and earned the attention of the FBI. His approach to each target was methodical and carefully planned. He would survey each bank and learn not only employees' names, but their movements, in some cases even finding their home addresses just to hold families hostage. All in the sake of monetary gain. But overshadowing his success may very well be his appearance and demeanor. Like a man out of time, he wore a fine gray 3-piece suit and spoke calmly and politely to those he engaged with. By now, you're probably asking a series of very reasonable questions. What is this all about? What do these crimes all have to do with one another? What tether connects them in a seemingly invisible way that spans nearly 113 years? Well, as they say, truth is often stranger than fiction. Each one of these crimes was committed by the Gentleman Bandit.
Well, howdy there, y'all. I'm Ramblin' Marcus, and this here's Marcus Rambles. I tell you, I've been wanting to cover this topic for a while now, and I'm glad I finally got the chance to sit down with you and hopefully introduce you to a game that caught my eye not so long ago. If there's one thing folks enjoy perhaps just a touch too much, it's the Wild West. The old frontier when law and order were more of a suggestion and less of a mandatory thing. Gunslingers, sheriffs, highwaymen, saloons and shootouts, brothel gals.
The desecration of the Native American people at the hands of the white man.
I tell you, this is a genre of media that has most certainly survived the test of time. Shoot, not too long ago, Red Dead Redemption 2 came out, and it's still blowing people's minds, winning awards and whatnot like it came out guns blazing yesterday. And it's difficult to even refer to westerns as simply a genre when it can encompass so much. Westerns have the power and ability to be anything you set your heart on. Revenge stories, mysteries, romance tales, comedies, hell, even horror shows you if you know where to look. Highly recommend Bone Tomahawk, by the by. Excellent Old West horror film. Yes, sir, you can't throw a stone without hitting something that has the veneer of the American Old West slapped on it. Tabletop RPG scene ain't no exception. It's hardly a secret that I enjoy my click-clack math rock games. Been playing them for close to 10 years now. But y'all have a bit of a preconception about what a tabletop RPG is. You know, you and your pals gathered around a table and one of you's spinning a yarn while the others contribute in their own way. It's the pinnacle of what the genre is all about. And there are certainly Western RPGs that fit that playstyle. Deadlands, for instance, is a supernatural-themed Western RPG with a unique poker-based play system. But this ain't exactly what you would call your standard approach to the media at hand. The game in question is none other than Gentleman Bandit. Created by Allison Arth, Gentleman Bandit differs strongly from many other role-playing games out there on the market.
They call you the Gentleman Bandit because no one knows your name. They call you a monster, a villain, a dealer of death. But they don't know you. Not your heart. Your poet's heart, filled with rage or filth or the expansiveness of true love. Not your grieving heart loosed over a chasm, making a sound like the sorrow of wolves as it plummets towards wet river stones. Cracked bones left to bleach.
You see, the Gentleman Bandit is a subgenre of tabletop role-playing game, and that it's what is known as a single-player TTRPG, or solo-play game. So you don't need to fuss over conflicting schedules like most other games. Sorry, D&D, I love you, darling, but god damn it, I can't play if the others ain't available. But it's not the fact that it's a solo experience that makes Gentleman Bandit so interesting and unique. You might have noticed a part in the description that mentioned your poet's heart. Well, and I'm not joking, that's because Gentleman Bandit is an RPG about writing poetry in the Old West. In this writing-focused RPG, you personify the eponymous Gentleman Bandit to write a 13-line poem you'll leave for the dead and the ones who discover them. Now, to some, that might not exactly sound like your cup of tea. It's not going on adventures and looting treasure from goblins, but to me, as a writer myself, I find the allure of playing out a romanticized outlaw leaving poems behind at the scenes of their crimes to be enthralling, captivating even. Not to mention, it's quite the challenge. Oh, now, let's slow things down. I mean, how do you make a game out of one of the world's oldest forms of artistic expression? Quite simply, actually. Deceptively simple, but simple. To play, you'll need two things. Something to write with, your choice, and a standard deck of 54 playing cards. And that's it! From here, your goal is to write 13 lines that will form your poem. For each line, you draw a card. The number and suit on each card dictates a motive and a matter. The theme and topic. For instance, if I drew a card and got the 7 of spades, the first line of my poem would be themed around loss, and would explore the idea of where are you from. And that's it! It's seriously that simple. And yet, it's incredibly daunting. Especially if you're not used to writing poetry or writing at all. But even if that's the case, I urge you to try it out anyway. Poetry is one of those things that comes across as very scary to those who are not versed in any kind of creative writing. For some, it's not that big of a deal. It's an artistic expression. But unlike painting or traditional writing, poetry is more rife with emotion and not bound by your usual writing foibles. Poetry is raw and unrestrained, and if you allow it, can also be freeing, exposing. Like letting a gentle wind touch exposed and bleeding nerve endings. It can be scary to let yourself be vulnerable like that. But that's the beauty of the thing. Poetry can also be a shield. Your words and meaning hidden behind that true emotion for others to try and parse and understand. But if you're not really sure where to start, the game offers an additional option for play. You can also roll a d6 to determine mode, a tool used in writing poetry. For instance, before drawing your first card, you would roll a 6-sided die that would determine how you formulate your poem, such as include a word or phrase with a double meaning in every other line, or compose each line using 8 syllables or fewer. There are also other modes of play as well. Poker play, for instance, can dictate how you approach the next time you play, as well as many others, including a few multiplayer modes. Even though the main crux of the game is focused on the single-player aspect. There is an aspect about Gentleman Bandit that I can't help but find fascinating, and it almost has nothing to do with the game itself. That being, the Gentleman Bandit themselves. It's true, when you play this game, you are the Gentleman Bandit. It is the role you assume. But that role doesn't belong to you and you alone. That title, Gentleman Bandit, it's not yours by yourself. For each one of us is and can be a Gentleman Bandit should they be bold enough to act with the tact and respect while still taking what you want. For no two poets' hearts are identical, each of us carrying our own pain, love, hate, and joy. And as I said before, truth is often stranger than fiction.
The stories I told in the beginning were all true, factual, documented incidents. But none of these crimes are connected by any one man. Charles E. Bowles, also known as Black Bart, was one of America's first infamous coach robbers and was made famous by the fact that he left a poem at the scene of one of his crimes. Robert Leroy Parker, better known as Butch Cassidy, I feel needs no real introduction. Ezra Allen Miner, also known as Bill Miner, was the second man in Canadian history to ever rob a train. Drew Mills Dobson, who is still alive to this day, spent 3 decades behind bars. He's now living with his daughter and spends his days trying to reconnect with her. At one point or another throughout the annals of time, each of these men were, and are, referred to as the Gentleman Bandit. Their stories are told and documented. But before we leave for today, I'd like to tell you the story of one more Gentleman Bandit. Tender was your voice that lifted my everyday mask. Gripping you tight, I'm fearful of the world swallowing you whole. I hide it well, your fiery breath that fills my lungs and gives me peace. Sweet like honey, your touch soothed and calmed me. Bygone ghosts haunt my broken home. The law, foul and wrong, demands my service. To hell with them. I have all I need. But where did they hide you away, my fire? I grow cold in your absence and feel it creeping back, my everyday mask. Which of these ghosts so gray and empty is the one I used to know? A new mask shatters through, smiling, a law of my own vengeful making. Were you scared, alone, hopeful that I would arrive just in time? Smoking iron in hand, I have no regrets, your name on my lips.